What cannot be achieved in one lifetime will happen when one lifetime is joined to another. Harold S. Kushner. Welcome to Retirement Mentorship, your mentor to and through retirement. I'm your host, Freeman Certified Financial Planner. Today we are talking about lifetime capital gains. Not short-term capital gains or long-term capital gains, but lifetime capital gains. It's coming up on the Retirement Mentorship podcast. But first, the 2-min tune-in, the primary points of the podcast in about 2 minutes. While we are obsessed as human beings with short-term items, whether it be our returns or our problems or where we're at in life, there is an evolution that we can take to start thinking more long-term, to invest not for tomorrow, but for next year and next decade. That can be pushed further, though. And we need to stop thinking even in terms of long-term investing, but instead to lifetime investing. What are the gains that we will make over a lifetime? And are we properly invested to do that? Beyond that, is our mindset set up so that we can think and act that way? Do we believe that lifetime investing is an endeavor worth pursuing? And finally, whose lifetime are we thinking of? Our own or the next? All that and more will be discussed in this episode of the Retirement Mentorship Podcast. Lifetime capital gains. As discussed in the introduction to the Retirement Mentorship Podcast, part of the goal of this podcast is to add to your knowledge and, more importantly, reinforce your belief in planning and in proper investing. No one can do things that they don't know about, and no one will do things they don't believe that they should. We want to continue to learn about things that we should do and reinforce the belief that we should do them. This is an episode dedicated to building your belief. When we're talking about lifetime capital gains and short-term capital gains and long-term capital gains, we are not talking about the tax implications of your investing actions, such as generating short-term or long-term capital gains. Instead, we're talking about the life implications of your investing mindset. Your mindset determines everything. What you know and believe determines all of your actions. If you have faulty thinking and beliefs, you will have faulty actions. And if your thinking and beliefs are underwhelming, your actions will be underwhelming. No one achieves greatness, however they define it, with a fixed mindset. So when you open it up and think of greater and better possibilities and begin to believe in those possibilities, that your actions will align and they will come about. What is the evolution in the way that we think about investing for the long term? First, short-term capital gains. Human nature is obsessed with short-term results. By nature, we are programmed to only consider the very short term. And that did us very well back in the day before modern civilization, when people weren't thinking about retirement or how much they were going to save for a future vacation, but rather how to survive today or perhaps even this hour. Short-term focus, focusing on staying alive and on keeping your family alive and surviving, was the name of the game. And while we've come a long way as a civilization, our mindset hasn't necessarily kept pace with what we're doing. This has been demonstrated over and over again by psychologists and researchers who have studied how the brain works. The brain, by default, is wired to think short term. When it comes to investing, that is what generates behaviors like chasing returns, looking at what did well just this last year or this last month, and continually switching our investments to try to capitalize on something that already did well and is thus unlikely to continue to do abnormally well. It's the first of the 4 horsemen, and many people fall to it. And the reason they do is because we are thinking short term. We are trying to get short-term capital gains, and we chase returns to do so. Or we are trying to avoid short-term crises. We think we see some crisis looming on the horizon, some catastrophe that the news is promoting and that politicians are stoking fear into people. And so we try to avoid them by pulling out of the market, and only to see the market continue to go on without us and reinvesting our money back in it, only then to see it fall. It is hard to stick to a long-term plan when we're battling with a short-term brain. But to think long-term and therefore to act long-term is a requirement of success. They've done studies on this, and one of the main predictors of long-term success over a lifetime, is the person's ability to think long-term. The more people think short-term, the less well they do over their lifetime. And the more people think long-term, the better they do over their lifetime. We must shift our mindset into long-term thinking, to focus not on short-term capital gains, but on long-term capital gains. How do we invest not just for today, but for this decade? We can do better. We can get long-term capital gains with a shift in our mindset. And we must continually reinforce those beliefs to think long-term, to avoid the news of today, the crisis du jour, whatever is happening now, and stop reacting to the markets. Instead, to plan and with disciplines and principles continuously act on that plan. We can and must begin thinking long-term. And that isn't just a one-time decision that I'm just going to start thinking long-term and investing for the long-term, but rather a continuous cycle of learning and reinforcing those beliefs so that you can act on them, even when you have current words to the contrary. Hearing a one-time message about investing long-term will not suffice when everything else that you're hearing says to abandon the plan and succumb to panic. You must reinforce your long-term beliefs so that you can realize long-term capital gains. And it goes even further. Often people think of long-term investing as investing for 10 or maybe even 20 years, but we must push it out even further. Don't simply think of long-term, think of lifetime. Not your long-term capital gains, but your lifetime capital gains. Evolve into looking towards your entire life. Do not invest for a decade from now, invest for the end of your life. You must be investing for your lifetime, at a minimum. Not 10 years from now, not 15, not at retirement, but your entire life. That is the end time horizon. That is what you are investing for, your lifetime. Of course, we don't know how long that will be, and that's the point. It should be something that endures even beyond it, which is the final evolution. Investing not just for your lifetime, but for the next lifetime. Investing for your kids' lifetime or your grandkids' lifetime. Investing for multi-generational wealth. And if your motivation for multi-generational wealth is so that your kids and grandkids can spend more money and consume more of the world, that of course is a faulty view. We don't want wealth so that we can consume more. We want more wealth so that we can create more, to give more, to do more in the world, to do well, to do good. If the good and generous people out there don't have the money, that means it's all being left to the selfish and greedy people. If you are a generous person, someone who wants to give and create jobs and businesses and charities and to create an impact, then you should want wealth, because wealth allows you to do more of all those good things. And I'll often hear from many people, I don't want to leave a lot to my kids. They don't need millions of dollars. They would just waste it. And then the challenge to you would be, especially if you still have kids, is to raise the kind of children to whom you would want to leave $10 million. Raise the kind of children to whom you would want to leave $10 million. And if your kids are already out of the house, then how can you influence them and encourage them to be the kind of people that you would want to leave $10 million. Once you have switched from short-term capital gains to long-term capital gains, to finally to lifetime capital gains, and you have invested and officially checked off the box of having all the money you need for your lifetime, the next step is to think about the next lifetime. How do we invest for your kids' lifetime and your grandkids' lifetime to do more than you could ever do in your lifetime alone? If you are making an impact on the people that you love and care about, your family, your friends, your community, your workplace, the best way to carry on that impact is to have your children and charities continue it when you are gone. Invest for their lifetimes. So what do we do with this? Well, none of this is possible by investing in cash and bonds. It will never generate the kind of wealth that you need to leave not only for your own lifetime, but for the lifetimes of those who outlive you. There just isn't enough return. This is only achievable by investing and reinvesting in the enduring value of the greatest companies in the world. To own and take part in the profits and the growth of the greatest companies in the world is the only way to leave this kind of legacy. To invest not even for long-term capital gains, but for lifetime capital gains. Do you have a plan? Do you have an investing plan that includes ownership in the greatest companies in the world? A plan that will allow you to make an impact in your retirement. A plan that will not just barely help you survive, but that will help you thrive and to be generous and to leave an impact on those people while you're still alive. And then to leave the best gift in the world, wealth to your family that they can take and continue on without you. Wealth to your favorite churches and charities and the organizations and movements that you value and want to continue to see do good work even when you're gone. We must end the short-term thinking and extend it to long-term thinking. We must evolve our long-term thinking into lifetime thinking and then even into multi-lifetime thinking. And all this can only be funded by the greatest companies in the world. Do you have a plan?